back to the age-old question, what type of marketing should I do? What is the best way to market for my business? And the answer that I'm going to give you is one that is going to make you just be pissed off at me because it depends.
Welcome to the PainterGrowth podcast, where we help you scale your painting company in record time. Join us as we explore sales, marketing, hiring, finances, leadership, and more, everything that you need to know to scale and grow your painting business. I hope you enjoy and subscribe.
What is up, everyone? Mike Gore-Hickman here, founder of PainterGrowth.com, and you're listening to the PainterGrowth podcast. And thanks for being here. Stoked that you're listening to me or watching me if you got the audio version. More and more when I do these solo episodes, I just feel like a radio host because I just got to keep the audio going and avoid dead space and all of that stuff. Dead air, I guess is what they call it in the biz, you know. But with that being said, I hope that I can fill that dead air as valuably as possible today because we got a pretty cool topic. It's an important one. I mean, it's one that is, I think, kind of like over, there's a lot of misinformation around it, around marketing, around lead gen, around of cost of acquisition, cost of marketing, things like that. But I want to try to clear the air a little bit. And I want to show you and explain to you how a 7-figure and even some 8-figure painting businesses, at least all the ones that I know, think about marketing, think about lead gen, think about cost of acquisition, because some of it might surprise you, right? Oftentimes I'll get asked, hey, Mike, what's the best way to get leads? Oh, what a loaded question. I'm sure you've thought about that before, right? What's the best way to get leads? And you're like, oh, someone tells you the answer. And typically people will tell you the answer, especially if you ask, in those Facebook groups and stuff, they're going to tell you the answer that they're selling or that they get an affiliate code with. So if you ever talk to like an ad agency, right, what's the best way to get leads? Well, hell, they're going to tell you the best way to get leads is through Facebook ads and Google ads, as long as they can do them for you. And it kind of continues like that, right? You ask like lead services, what's the best way to get leads? And they'll tell you buying leads. And you ask anyone what's the best way to get leads, and they'll tell you, their small perspective on what has worked for them, not necessarily what is the best in aggregate. And hopefully I can bust this with you because, at PainterGrowth, we've now worked with over 600 painting contractors, independent painting contractors from all over North America, the United States, and Canada. And we've seen it all. We've seen what works. We've seen what doesn't work. We've seen good agencies, bad agencies, good lead services, bad lead services, good grassroots marketing campaigns, some bad ones too. And I want to kind of shine the light on a little bit of this, a few beliefs that I hopefully want to help you shatter, help you kind of look at marketing in a more measured approach, I suppose you call it. Analytical approach is really important to do that. Marketing is a game of numbers. And if you're not watching your numbers, you don't know what your numbers are, then it's really going to be hard. You're like gambling, right? It's like going to the casino where you're going to lose. If you're not tracking the right metrics and you are spending money on marketing, then it's a losing battle. And it's not a game that you want to play because you're ill-equipped for that. So really, before I get into anything and tactics and structure, I just really want to talk about the numbers behind it. Now, when you talk about acquisition, and when I say acquisition, I mean acquiring clients. I don't mean acquiring businesses. I mean acquiring clients. What's the cost of acquisition, or CAC, abbreviated, kind of, you can also call it your CAC. CAC, cost of acquisition. Cost to acquire customers. That's what it is. Anyway, cost to acquire customers, CAC, CAC. And what is this? Essentially, what is a fully considered cost that it takes for you to acquire customers? Now, this is best looked over a time horizon, not necessarily one specific lead or appointment or sale. I've seen a lot of posts by Facebook ad agencies in the painting space. You guys probably know who I'm talking about after I tell you this example, where they'll say, look at this campaign. We just got this client 14 leads for $12 a piece. Or this client just booked a $32,000 job with only $100 of ad spend. And you're like, oh my God, that is amazing. that means if I spend $1,000, I'll book 320,000. No, it doesn't work like that. Just because you get one lead or one job or a small amount of jobs, that does not mean that will scale. So to get the most accurate data, or the most accurate picture of marketing cost and cost per acquisition and CAC and return on investment, you need to look at it over a longer time horizon, and you need to fully consider your entire marketing costs. So oftentimes these agencies, they won't factor in their own agency fees, right? How much was their agency fee? They'll just look at ad spend. Some of these guys will range from $1,000 per month to $2,500 per month just for their management fee. So you got to add that in too. And then you got to look at it over a longer time horizon. I always start with minimum 30 days. So over that 30-day period, not how many leads you get or how many estimates did you get, but how much did you book? And be cautious of if that return on investment is aggregated or focused on one or two, large jobs that you happen to book. I've also seen that agency do this exact thing where they're like, hey, you booked a $80,000 job in the first month, so you don't you paid for the agency services for the whole year. It's okay. Well, that one job that skews the results and doesn't properly reflect an ongoing return on investment. So you need to keep looking at it on an ongoing basis. Yes, that month was really good, but what was the next month? So how should you look at this? What does fully considered marketing costs mean? So what are all of the costs associated with marketing over the course of a month, and divide that into how many jobs, how much revenue you booked out of it. So what are the fees? What are the costs associated with it? Well, you got your ad spend, you got potentially management fees, you got printing, you got lead services, you have design work, you have door-to-door teams, you have all of these different costs. And the easiest way to do this is to take your profit and loss at the end of the month. Hopefully you guys have a bookkeeper who's doing your books and keeping up. If you don't have a bookkeeper, you should get one. Really, really important to get a bookkeeper. You can use bookkeeping for painters. Daniel Honan, they do a really good job. Let them know that you heard about them from us. I think they can get you a sweet deal. Or you can just find a bookkeeper on Upwork or locally to you. You don't need a lot of hours. You only need 5 to 7 hours a week, maybe 10. It's going to cost you $300 to $500 a month. Not a huge deal at the end of the day when you realize the amount of data and information they're going to get you. Anyway, that aside, what you want to look at is your profit and loss statement, also known as your income statement, at the end of every month. So I have my bookkeeper get me my month's end P&L by about the 7th, about a week into the following month. So by August 7th, I get to see July's numbers. And I can see basically how much revenue we did, all of the variable costs associated with that, my gross margin, and then all my fixed costs, and then my net margin, and then my non-operating income, and then EBITDA. So EBITDA or net profit or whatever you want to call them. They're slightly different. We're not going to get into that today. So when we want to factor in cost to acquire clients, we just look over the last 30 days and just add in all of the line items associated with marketing and acquiring clients, every single one. And if you have a sales rep, you're going to include that as well. Okay, so you get that number. Just say for this example, that number, everything that we spent on marketing and acquiring clients and sales this month was $10,000. Okay, let's just say that. And then all of the revenue that we brought in, all the jobs that we sold, say, is $50,000. Okay. Now what we can see is that we had a 5-to-1, so 50,000 in, 10,000 to cost, a 5-to-1 return on sales, return on investment in terms of the sales that we got. Now that can be a good metric, but it doesn't really tell you the full story. It doesn't tell you how much it costs you to make money, because if it costs you, the way that we look at it is actually your gross profit instead of your top line revenue. So if you have a $50,000 of sales, $50,000 of sales, and $25,000 of that is cost to fulfill on those sales. So, paint and labor, that leaves you with $25,000 left over. Now, if it costs you $10,000 of marketing to get you $25,000 of gross profit, right now you're looking at it a little bit differently. Instead of a 5-to-1 return on investment, you're actually looking at a 2.5-to-1, right? Which is a lot tighter. But when you think about return on investment, you don't really want to think about how much revenue did I book, but how much gross profit did I make? Because revenue is meaningless unless you understand the gross profit associated with it. Because if I'm selling $10 million per year, but it costs me $9.5 million or $9.9 million to fulfill on that revenue, either by selling the widget or the cost of production or whatever, then that only leaves me with like 1% left over. And then that $10 million is meaningless because it's all about gross profit. And then once you have that gross profit, you have your overhead operating expenses, which you can manage, which will ultimately lead you to net profit. But we want to look at gross profit. So how much does it cost to generate every dollar of gross profit? So in this example, $1 of revenue, $1 of marketing brings in $2.5 of gross profit. Okay, not a bad trade. So where do we want that to be? We want that margin, that ratio, to be between 3 and 5. So we want your gross profit over your cost of acquisition to be between 3 and 5. So if you're at 5, that's if you look on a 50% gross margin, that's about a 10-to-1 ROI in the traditional sense, a 5-to-1 ROI when you're looking at gross profit. Cool. So going back to marketing and lead gen and cost of acquisition, I wanted to break all of that down for you because I think it's important to have a little bit of context to know what yardstick we're measuring ourselves by. Because it's not just generating top line revenue. We want to know how much gross profit we're generating. Okay, back to the age-old question, what type of marketing should I do? What is the best way to market for my business? And the answer that I'm going to give you is one that is going to make you just be pissed off at me because it depends. And it doesn't depend in like the traditional sense. It does depend on your business and things like that. But I would actually say that the best form of marketing is to have a diversified marketing approach, to not be overly reliant on any one source, but to have a consistent number of marketing channels available for you to bring in leads on demand. And so if you only have one marketing channel, say you're fully reliant on Facebook ads, but then something happens to the algorithm or your account gets shut down or your credit card goes out for a little bit, your lead flow gets shut off. Just gonna have a sip of coffee here. My wife got me a new orange mug for our anniversary. I like the color orange. Anyway, safety, I suppose. When it comes to the marketing mix, especially when you're a small business, like if you're doing less than $30,000 per month, you need to have really low cost marketing. Because if you're doing less than 30K a month, that's like 15K of gross profit, maybe more if you're also on the tools, but you have less money to play with. So your marketing needs to be more efficient. Now you might be asking, hey, Mike, what are the most efficient marketing methods? Now you want ones that are really low cost on the front end and high return on the back end. So if you're doing less than 30K a month, you should not be doing Facebook ads. You should not be doing Google ads. You should be doing the things that are really, take more effort and less money. These are things like job site marketing, networking with strategic partners like property managers and realtors every single week, door-to-door marketing, flyers, door hangers, and potentially, and this is going to surprise a lot of people, but potentially buying leads. Now, I don't love buying leads, and I certainly don't love buying leads if that's your only source of leads and you don't know how to get leads in other ways. But if you have a lead source that is good in your area where you buy leads and you can book jobs and you're looking at the numbers and you can see that it's providing you at least a 5-to-1 return on gross profit, then that might be a good deal. So if you're paying, $100 a lead and you're booking, $1,000 for every $100 you spend on leads, like, okay, it's not too bad. But where most people fail, and where probably you fail too, is tracking. Because most people don't track their numbers. So they're spending on leads, they're spending on Facebook, they're spending on whatever else, but they don't know how much they're spending to how much they're getting. So I have a spreadsheet for you that you can use on an ongoing basis to track how much you spend and what your return is, not just in general, but on every single lead source. Wow, how cool is that? It will require a little bit of manual entry, but you can track how much you spent on Facebook, how much you spent on leads, how much you spent on website, how much you spent on door-to-door, how much you spent on whatever, and put in the costs, put in the bookings, put in the leads, put in the estimates. And it's going to tell you your return on investment on each one. So that is something that if you're not doing right now, hit the link below. I'm going to give you that as a gift, completely free. Okay, so back to the point. If you're doing less than 30K, you should be focusing on the cheap things. Door-to-door marketing. Get some marketers going. Hire a couple kids. Hire a couple adults. Pay them $20 an hour plus $50 an estimate. Get them going in your ideal neighborhoods. A little trick here is not to go broad. Don't, like, if you're in Chicago, don't go everywhere. But even if you're in smaller cities, pick a little neighborhood of about 5,000 homes and hit those 5,000 homes over and over and over. An easy way to identify which 5,000 homes you should be going to is just look at your past jobs. Where were your best jobs in the best neighborhoods with the best margins, with the best clients that you want more of? Look at those, draw a circle on a map, and just hit those areas. Hit them with door hangers, hit them with flyers, hit them with door-to-door. Do that over and over. If you do that every single week, you would never need another job again, and it would be by far your lowest cost of acquisition. Once you have something like that going, now you can start layering on talking to property managers, talking to realtors, have a system, schedule a couple hours a week and call through all the property managers in your area. Hey, this is Mike with Blueprint Painting. Do you ever work with painters? If you want to sit down, I can tell you about what we do. Cool. We're looking for some commercial repaint work. We'd love to help you out. Let's have a chat. Let's grab a coffee. Do that over and over. If you can do 2 hours a week of consistent outreach to strategic partners, you will, like, the goal is to get a meeting, right? The goal isn't just to introduce yourself over the phone, but you want to get a meeting. So try to get one meeting every single week from a strategic partner. And then over the course of a year, that will be 50 meetings, 50 new strategic partners that now know your name, know your face, have had coffee with you. And then now you just have to keep it up, drop off cards, drop off donuts once or twice a year. And you are going to get a ton of work, more than you could ever handle. Okay, so we talked about door-to-door, we talked about job site marketing, we talked about property managers. Now, like, did you want to layer on leads? Okay, now if you have some extra revenue, some extra income, and you just want to buy a few leads, you know, lead source works pretty good for you. Let's put a couple $100 into lead services. Let's see how it can work for us. I don't recommend that for everyone, but if you just feel like you want a couple of leads, sometimes that can work. All right, but keep in mind, buying fish versus learning how to fish are two very different things. So what we do at PainterGrowth is we teach you how to fish. So we talked about a couple strategies. You can recognize them now, but for true understanding implementation, you need a way more in-depth training on that. And that is what we do. We give you that accountability support, blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to give you the full pitch right now. You know what we do. And if you don't know what we do, hey, that's on you. Okay. So literally, Jesse, one of our coaches, you've heard him here before. His painting business has like $1.5 million, 1.7 a year, and they don't buy leads. They don't do Facebook ads. They don't do Google ads. All they do is door-to-door and door hangers, and they get over $1.5 million a year. Obviously, some word of mouth too, and the property manager thing, but pretty much residential, just like I told you. So if you're doing less than $1 million a year, you really don't need to do Facebook ads. You really don't need to do Google ads. You don't need to do these high cost things. You don't need to spend $2,000 a month on SEO, for God's sake. Your business is not that big. You can scale it with these simple systems. I've had a lot of clients come in and they're like, oh, I have a $1 million business. Like, all this ego comes with it. It's like, okay, bud, a $1 million painting business is not that big of a business. I'm sorry if you're like way below this and like you're like, holy, I wish I could have $1 million business. But it's just like in the grand scheme of things, it's not a huge business. 100K per month. As soon as you get there, you're going to realize that 100K per month is the bottom of a new mountain that you have to climb. And in context, $1 million a year, or like 100K a month or so, is like 13 painters full time, right? It's like not a huge business. Like I have a friend, John, in Detroit. He has a business. He has like 56 or something like that, 60 in-house painters, W2s. It's crazy. That's a big business. They're gonna do like 10 or 11 million dollars. Like Jason in Minneapolis, right? I think they're like 13 to 15 million this year, right? Once you start getting that big, like, okay, this is big business. This is solid, very big in terms of painting. But $1 million per year, not a big business. You're just starting to figure this thing out. And a lot of people, a lot of painters, they can hustle their way to $1 million, and you can work really, really hard, and you can do your production and do your sales and manage your painters and run around and do your estimates and all this stuff. And you can hustle your way to $1 million. But to go from 1 to 3 and then from 3 to 10, you need completely different layers of professionalism, of systems, of scaling, of management, of team, of accountabilities, of structure, of so many different things. So if you're at like $1 million and you're struggling to get to that next level, like that's when you need help. But also if you're like just getting started and struggling to kind of like scale up to $1 million, you also need help. Business is like, it's like anything else where like if you can learn business as you go, but it's way, way more effective if you learn the foundations of business from someone. You get taught the foundations of business and then you can go from there. Like I've talked about this example before. Imagine trying to learn and fight jujitsu, but never having had a coach. All you do every single day is you step into the ring, or say mixed martial arts. You step into the octagon, and you get your ass kicked by a professional, and then you go home. And you walk into the octagon the next day, and you get your ass kicked. And then you go home. And then you walk into the octagon the next day, and you get your ass kicked. And then like one day you're going to be like, I don't want to walk into the octagon anymore. That hurts a lot. It's not very fun. Maybe I'm going to go get a job again. But if you train and you learn and you practice and you have accountability and you have support and you have a coach, now you look at that octagon and you're like, okay, I know what to do. And then you walk into the octagon and maybe you don't get your ass kicked as bad. And you're like, hey, that was kind of fun. A couple more times and maybe you win. Maybe you win a fight. But you can't do it without a coach, with someone to show you those fundamental moves. Once you have the fundamentals, then it becomes so much easier to scale and grow and get ahead. But as long as you're getting your ass kicked every day, you're not learning that much. So for anyone who's been in business, whether you're just starting, you've been in business for 5 years, 10 years, you're at 10K per month or 100K per month, if you do not have or have never had a coach, I implore you, click the link at the bottom of the podcast and let's just grab a call and let's see if this is something that could help you. Because I know from now working with over 600 painting contractors that growth is so much easier once you learn these fundamentals. Even if you've already figured out how to get to $1 million a year and you've done it without a coach, good for you. Now time to professionalize, right? Once you hit $1 million, you realize like, oh, this is not actually that big of a business. Don't let the ego get in the way of learning how to professionalize. So where else are we going with this? So we talked about marketing, we talked about lead gen, we talked about cost of acquisition. And then I guess it comes to problem solving it. So once you can break down, on a monthly basis and longer time horizons, once you have the data, cost per acquisition of each source, you can see your return on investment, your return on gross profit on every source of marketing, from your lead buying to your agency, to your door-to-door, to your flyers, to everything like that. Now it's time to optimize. So you want to look at the return on gross profit. Some might be low, some might be high, and you want to cut the lowest ones and reinvest in the highest ones. Pretty simple, pretty obvious, but most people don't do this because they don't look at the data. So look at the data, fill it in. Okay, did you know after you looked at all that, this lead source is really, really bad, and this one is really, really good. And it's going to be different for different people at different times. And just because you had 1 month with maybe a bad return on investment on a lead source that was historically really good does not mean to forget about it. But it means that you should look at it over a longer time horizon. And if it still sucks, if it consistently sucks, then maybe you should give it a little bit of a break and just double down, spend your few marketing dollars that you have on the better ones, the ones that are going to get you the higher return on gross profit per dollar spent. Anyway, that's a pretty simple explanation. We can get in a lot more detail, but I think that's probably a good spot for today. If you have any questions, we have a comment section on Spotify, so you can like reply and make comments. That'd be really cool if you made some comments. But if you're like, man, you talked about a lot of things, I don't know how to do those things, and I want some more resources and help and coaching. I've never had coaching. I really want to grow my business, blah, 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 blah. Then let's grab a call. Put the call link below and let's do it. What's hurting about a call? Anyway, hope you enjoyed it. Hope it wasn't too goofy for you. Hope to hear from you soon. Thanks for listening. Appreciate you guys. Peace.
Thanks for listening to the Painter Growth Podcast. If you want to grow your painting business, go to www.paintergrowth.com or click on the top link in the description. Talk soon.